I should have listened when they told me not to rent room 304, but at the time I was desperate, broke, and trying to convince myself that people were just superstitious and dramatic, especially in old buildings with even older tenants. I had moved into the city 2 weeks earlier for a job that barely paid SNUI to cover rent anywhere decent, and room 304 was the only place within my budget. The building manager, a thin, jittery man with a comb-over that kept falling into his eyes, hesitated when I pointed at the vacant unit on the rental list. 304, he repeated, voice dropping slightly, as if saying the number too loud would summon something out of the walls. You sure you don't want something else? He tapped his finger nervously on the list, hovering over 206, then 410. Those are bigger, brighter, less drafty. Drafty. That was the word he chose. Drafty. As if a little cold air was enough to turn away renters in a building where half the radiators didn't even work. I remember giving him a confused look, and he quickly added, just saying, people prefer those rooms. 304 has a reputation. He didn't elaborate.
I didn't ask.
I should have. The rent was dirt cheap, the deposit was low, and I was too tired of sleeping on a friend's couch to care about some weird vibe. I signed the lease in 10 minutes and moved in 2 days later. Room 304 greeted me with the smell of old carpet, stale air, and something I couldn't quite place at the time, like cold metal or rain-soaked earth, even though the windows were shut tight. The room wasn't horrible, it was just wrong in ways I couldn't articulate. The walls seemed slightly warped, as if they had absorbed years of moisture or pressure. The ceiling bulged in the center like something heavy had once rested above it. The window blinds were old and bent, the kind that clattered if a breeze passed through the room, even though no breeze ever did. The light switch flickered like it couldn't decide whether to stay alive or die completely. But what really caught my attention was the door. The front door to 304 didn't just close. It sealed, like the air tightened around it. I tried to chalk it up to the building settling or maybe the humidity, but every time I shut that door, I felt pressure in my ears, like I was entering a different atmosphere entirely. The first night, I barely slept. Not because of noise, actually quite the opposite. The building was unnaturally silent after midnight. No footsteps. No creaking floors. No neighbors arguing or watching TV on full volume. Just silence so thick it almost had weight. I kept waking up every hour, convinced I'd heard something. A faint tapping. A scratch under the floor. A slow, rhythmic noise from the ceiling, as if someone were dragging their fingers along the beams above my head. Around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my door.
Slow.
Heavy. Deliberate. They stopped right in front of my door. I held my breath, waiting for a knock, a voice, anything. But nothing came. The footsteps stood there for at least a full minute, long enough for my heartbeat to start matching the pulse in my throat, before they slowly, eventually walked away. I told myself it was just a neighbor, even though earlier the building manager had insisted that no one lived on my floor except an elderly woman in 309 who barely ever left her room. But I didn't sleep. Not really. The next morning, I ran into her, Mrs. Vance, in the hallway. She stood hunched over, wearing a pink nightgown with faded flowers, and her white hair stuck out in wisps like she'd just rolled out of bed. When she saw which apartment I stepped out of, her eyes widened behind her thick glasses. 304, she whispered, almost to herself. I thought they sealed that one. Seal? I asked, confused. Her mouth puckered like she regretted saying the word. You didn't hear anything last night, did you? Footsteps, I admitted. Around 3. Her shoulders tensed. She didn't ask me anything else. She didn't say goodbye. She just shuffled into her apartment and shut the door slowly, like she was closing the lid on something dangerous. I should have pressed her for more, but I didn't want to seem paranoid on day one. The second night was worse. I kept the lights on, telling myself it would help. It didn't. At around 1:30 a.m., the temperature in the room dropped so suddenly my breath fogged in the air. The old blinds started rattling, lightly, shakily, as if something was brushing against them from the outside. I forced myself to peek through the slats. Nothing. Just darkness, thick and unmoving. I tried to sleep. I really did. But at 2:14 a.m., I woke up to the unmistakable sound of someone whispering directly against the wall behind my bed. Not through the wall. Against it. Like their lips were pressed to the paint. It was a low, breathy sound, impossible to make out. It wasn't English. It wasn't any language I recognized. It was more like a string of sounds, wet and deliberate, as though someone were whispering a warning or a curse. I jumped out of bed, so fast I twisted my ankle. The whispering stopped instantly, like it knew I was no longer lying there. The next morning, I confronted the building manager. He looked more exhausted than usual, with deep bags under his eyes. When I mentioned the whispering, he didn't argue. He didn't try to blame plumbing or old vents. He just said quietly, "It'll get worse." That was it. No explanation. No follow-up. I grabbed his arm before he could walk away. "What happened in 304? He swallowed, eyes flicking toward the elevator like he was afraid someone or something might be listening. "People stayed," he whispered. "Even when they weren't supposed to. Stayed. After they died." My stomach dropped. "You're joking." His silence told me he wasn't. He pulled away from me and disappeared into his office without another word. I should have demanded answers. I should have packed my bags and run down the stairs and never looked back. Instead, I went upstairs, locked my door, and spent the rest of the afternoon pacing like a trapped animal. Night 3 didn't start normally. At 11 p.m., the power went out, but only in my unit. The hallway lights stayed on. I could see the glow through the gap under my door. I turned on my phone flashlight, feeling stupid for being scared when I knew it was probably just faulty wiring. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. The air in the unit was dense, almost oily, like it was sticking to my skin. I decided to shower, hoping the hot water would calm me down. Instead, it made everything worse. About 5 minutes in, the shower curtain slowly, very slowly, pulled inward, as though someone were gently dragging a finger down the plastic. I froze. The curtain moved another inch, then another, then another. I threw it open. No one. Nothing. But when I stepped out of the bathroom, dripping wet and shivering, I noticed something in the mirror across the room. A shape.
Dark. Tall.
Behind me. But when I spun around, there was nothing. Absolutely nothing. I wiped the steam off the mirror with my hand and saw only my pale, terrified reflection staring back at me. That night, I slept on the floor in the corner, facing the door, phone flashlight on, clutching my bag like it would protect me. And then came night 4. The night everything changed. I woke up at 3:02 a.m. to the sound of something scraping across my floor. Not footsteps. Not whispering. Scraping.
Slow. Heavy.
Like furniture being dragged. Except nothing in the room was moving. The sound was coming from under the floor. Directly under me. I scrambled onto the bed, heart pounding, gripping my pillow like it could muffle the noise.
Then it stopped.
Silence. 10 seconds later, a knock sounded directly under the floorboards. A knock. A deliberate human knock. 3 knocks. Slow. I jumped off the bed, grabbed my phone and keys, and ran to the door. But as soon as my hand touched the doorknob, the temperature dropped again. Not like before. This was worse. My lungs burned from the cold. Frost crawled across the metal door handle under my palm. And then the door knocked. From the inside, I stumbled backward, tripping over my own feet, landing hard on the carpet. The knock came again. This time louder. 3 knocks. Slow. Deliberate. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. I didn't move. I don't know how long I sat there shaking. Eventually, the knocking stopped. The room warmed slightly. The air loosened around me, and I realized something was trying to get out, or trying to get in. I couldn't stay. I grabbed my stuff, barely anything, just my backpack and phone, and ran out of the apartment barefoot. I didn't stop running until I reached the building manager's office. He was asleep in a chair, but when I shook him awake, he didn't seem surprised to see me. 304? He asked quietly. I nodded. He sighed deeply, rubbing his temples. It happens faster now. What does? I demanded. His voice shook as he answered. It doesn't like being unoccupied. I stared at him, heart racing. What is it? He hesitated. The room. Rooms don't, some do. His voice snapped like a brittle twig. Some remember. Some keep things. Some feed. I backed away. I'm leaving. I'm done. I'm moving out tonight. He didn't stop me. Didn't try to convince me to stay. He just handed me a form and said, I'll terminate the lease. Take whatever you need. Leave the rest. I returned to 304 only once to grab the last of my clothes. The room felt bigger, like the walls had expanded in my absence. The blinds rattled as I walked in. The air felt electric. I didn't linger. As I left, I heard it again. A whisper.
Soft. Wet.
Right behind my ear. Stay. I ran faster than I ever have in my life. I never returned. I moved across town, blocked the building's number, ignored every email. But 2 weeks later, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A new listing online. Room 304 for rent. Newly available, it said. Quiet unit. Perfect for single tenants. Low rent. Immediate occupancy. And the photo wasn't one I had ever seen before. It was a picture of the room taken from the doorway. Empty.
Clean. Bright.
Except in the far corner, barely visible, was a shape.
Dark. Tall.
Almost human. And its head was turned toward the camera. I didn't notice the man at first, not until the third night, and even then I thought I was imagining things because who the hell walks every single night at 3:17 a.m. on it? I'd only moved into the apartment complex because it was cheap, quiet, and close to my work, and after years of sharing small rooms with roommates who blasted music or fought with their boyfriends at 2 a.m., I was just grateful for silence. Apartment 512 was small but decent. Old carpets, flickering hallway lights, and a window that rattled whenever the wind hit it, but otherwise fine. The elderly woman across from me, Mrs. Adler, nodded politely when I moved in, but didn't say much. Most neighbors kept to themselves. It suited me. I wasn't looking for friends. The first 2 nights were uneventful. I unpacked, set up my space, cooked simple dinners, and tried to adjust to the constant hum of the old building's heating system. But then came night 3. I woke suddenly, not from a dream, but as if someone had pulled me out of sleep by the collar. My eyes snapped open, heart pounding, breath shallow. There was no sound, no movement, no reason to wake up. Then I glanced at the digital clock on my nightstand. 3:17 a.m. I don't know why the number stuck with me. Maybe because waking at the exact same time felt strange, or maybe because the air in the room felt heavy, like someone else was in there breathing with me. I sat up slowly, rubbing my eyes, trying to shake the feeling. That's when I heard it. Footsteps.
Slow.
Heavy. Deliberate. Coming from the hallway outside my apartment. At first I thought it was a neighbor, but the steps were too measured. Too perfectly spaced. Each one landed exactly 3 seconds apart.
1, 2, 3. Thud. 1, 2, 3. Thud.
I held my breath and listened. The footsteps moved directly in front of my door and stopped. My skin prickled. I could feel someone standing there, though I couldn't explain how I knew. The air seemed to shift, the way it does when a large person blocks a doorway. I waited for a knock, a shuffle, a breath, anything, but nothing came. After nearly a minute, the footsteps continued, same pace, same rhythm, fading down the hallway. I got out of bed and went to the peephole. I don't know why, curiosity is a disease. But when I looked, I saw nothing. The hallway was empty, completely empty. The next morning, I told myself it was just an early riser or someone with insomnia. Maybe a night shift worker. I brushed it off. But night 4 came, and once again I woke up at 3:17 a.m., heart slamming against my ribs like someone was banging on it from the inside. Again, total darkness, total silence, and then footsteps, the exact same pace, the exact same rhythm, slowly approaching my door. My stomach twisted painfully. This wasn't normal. I stared at the ceiling, frozen, listening as the steps grew closer. Then they stopped again right outside my door.
My mouth went dry.
I waited, and again, after a minute, the footsteps continued down the hall and vanished. I couldn't sleep after that. I stayed awake until dawn, sitting on the edge of my bed with the lamp on like a terrified child. By breakfast time, I was exhausted. I ran into Mrs. Adler in the hallway later, and even though I barely knew her, I forced myself to ask, "Have you heard footsteps at night?" Her entire body stiffened. Her eyes widened behind her glasses. She didn't speak. Not at first. Then she leaned in and whispered, "Don't open your door after 3. I didn't say anything about my door," I replied. She didn't answer. She just shuffled away faster than I thought her old legs could move. That was the moment I realized something was wrong here, truly wrong. But my stupid, rational brain still tried to make sense of it. You know how humans are. We'll justify anything to avoid believing in the impossible. Night 5 came. I set alarms. I tried to stay awake, but I drifted off on the couch around midnight. When I opened my eyes again, the clock on the microwave glowed faintly from the kitchen. 3:17 a.m. My throat tightened. Before even hearing it, I felt the footsteps approaching from the far end of the hallway. Thud, 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 slow, steady, predatory. I tiptoed to the door, not daring to breathe loudly. There was no reason to look.
None.
But curiosity, it's like gravity. You can't fight it forever. I looked through the peephole. My blood turned to ice. At first I saw nothing. Just the dim yellow hallway and the peeling wallpaper. Then he stepped into view. A tall man. Very tall. At least 6'4", maybe more. Wearing old, ruined clothing. Dark pants, a heavy coat torn at the shoulders, frayed at the sleeves like it had been dragged along gravel. His head hung forward, chin almost touching his chest, as if he wasn't strong enough to hold it up. Or didn't want to. But what froze me wasn't the clothing or the height. It was the way he walked. His legs moved normally, heavy and deliberate. But his arms didn't move at all. Not a single sway. Not even a twitch. They hung at his sides like dead weight, unnaturally stiff, like they were nailed in place. Each footstep was a perfect 3-second interval. He stopped directly in front of my door. Not looking up. Not moving. Just standing. I backed away from the peephole, terrified he somehow knew I was watching. 30 agonizing seconds passed. Then, without warning, he snapped his head upward. Not slowly, violently. Like someone had grabbed his hair and yanked it. His face slammed into the peephole so fast I stumbled back and fell onto the floor. I heard the impact, heard the scrape of
bone or skin or something grinding against the metal. And then he exhaled, a long, deep, rattling breath that fogged the peephole glass from the outside. I lay on the floor, trembling, waiting for something, maybe for him to knock, or try the handle, or break the door down. But instead, he simply walked away. Same rhythm, same pace. I didn't sleep for 2 days after that. On night 7, sick of fear and lack of answers, I waited outside my door at 3:10 a.m., determined to record him. I had my phone ready. The hallway lights flickered as they always did around that time, giving the place a sickly yellow glow. At 3:17 a.m., the building seemed to exhale like the walls themselves understood the significance of the moment. Then the footsteps began. My heart hammered in my throat as the figure appeared at the far end of the hallway. He walked the same way, head down, coat dragging against the carpet, arms motionless. I hit record, but my phone screen went black instantly. It didn't turn off, it just went completely dark like something was blocking the display. I tapped the button, shook it, panicked. Nothing worked. The man came closer. I pressed myself against my door, holding my breath, silently begging whatever force cursed this building to pass me by. He stopped again, directly in front of my door. Head still down, not breathing, not moving. Then, like before, he slammed his face upward. I didn't need the peephole to know. I felt it. Felt the shift in air as his head jerked back with unnatural force. My phone suddenly turned back on by itself, vibrating violently in my hand, displaying a message I did not write. Don't look. I nearly dropped it. I backed into my apartment as quietly as I could, shutting the door with shaking hands. That night, I didn't hear him walk away. Not for a long time, as if he lingered there, waiting for something. Waiting for me to make a sound. A mistake. I couldn't take it anymore. The next day, I confronted the building manager, a middle-aged man with too much gray hair and too little patience. When I told him what I saw, he froze. Like the words themselves were a curse. "You shouldn't have looked," he said softly. "Most people hear him. They never look. Who is he?" I demanded. The manager rubbed his face with both hands. "He used to live here. Long time ago. Before my time. Before most people here were even born. A man from the 5th floor. They found his body in the hallway at 3:17 a.m. No one knows how he died. No wounds. No signs of struggle. He took a shaky breath. But the cameras showed something strange." "What?" He shook his head slowly. His body was already lying on the floor at 3:16. But at 3:17, he appeared in the hallway again. Standing. Walking. "So what does he want?" I whispered, horrified. The manager looked at me with hollow eyes. "Company." I didn't sleep at all that night. I sat by the window, wrapped in a blanket, watching the streetlights outside, while calculating my savings and how soon I could escape this cursed building. I decided I would leave the next morning, no matter what it cost me. But at 3:17 a.m., something happened that shattered whatever courage I had left. My doorknob turned. Slowly, quietly, steadily. Not forceful, not aggressive. Just testing. Testing to see if I'd forgotten to lock it. I held my breath until my lungs burned. The doorknob twisted again. A little harder this time. My heart was beating so loudly I thought he'd hear it. The metal clicked once, twice, like something was picking at it from the outside. Then something slid against the bottom of the door. A shadow. Long. Still. I stared in horror as fingers, bony, stiff, impossibly pale, reached under the door, scraping the floor, searching blindly across the threshold. Cold air seeped through the gap, and with it came a whisper. Not a human whisper, but something dry and raspy like wind through dead leaves. "I saw you." I clamped both hands over my mouth to keep from screaming. The fingers twitched, scraping the wood again before retracting slowly. The footsteps continued down the hallway, and I finally let myself breathe. I left before sunrise. I didn't even bother packing everything. Just grabbed what I could carry and ran down the stairs, ignoring the elevator entirely. As I passed the 2nd floor, Mrs. Adler opened her door slightly, peeking out. "He saw you," she whispered sadly. "He doesn't forget the ones he sees." I didn't answer. I didn't trust myself not to break down. I moved in with a co-worker temporarily, too afraid to stay alone. For weeks I avoided the building, avoided that street entirely. I blocked the manager's number, ignored every email about unfinished move-out procedures, and tried to move on. I thought maybe distance would break whatever connection that thing had made with me. I was wrong. A month later, at my co-worker's place, I woke up suddenly in the middle of the night. Not from a nightmare. Not from noise. I just woke up. My heart was pounding. My throat was dry. I rolled over to look at the clock on my phone. 3:17 a.m. And from the hallway outside the spare bedroom door, I heard footsteps. Slow. Heavy. 3 seconds apart. Getting closer. I used to believe walls kept things out. Noise, strangers, the world. I never thought I'd live to see the day when the thing I needed protection from was already inside them. I moved into the apartment because it was cheap. Too cheap in a city like this. The landlord, a soft-spoken older man, claimed there was minor sound leakage due to the building's age. I laughed it off. I didn't care if I could hear my neighbors watching TV or arguing. I'd slept next to train tracks before. Noise didn't scare me. Not then. The first night was normal. I unpacked, fixed a cup of tea, and sat on the floor, letting the silence settle like dust. The apartment had this old smell. Wood, old plaster, something faintly metallic. But it was cozy in a strange way, like it was waiting for someone to fill it again. I fell asleep on a mattress I dragged inside earlier. At around 2:40 a.m., a sound woke me. A voice, faint, muffled, coming from inside the wall next to my bed. It wasn't crying or yelling, it was whispering. Whispering words. I sat up, frozen, listening. At first, I thought it was the neighbor talking on the phone. Thin walls, right? But the more I listened, the more I realized the voice wasn't just whispering. It was calling. Calling me. Are you awake? A soft, raspy female voice. Too close. Much too close. I held my breath. Can you hear me? I backed away from the wall, so slowly I barely felt my limbs moving. I didn't make a sound. I didn't breathe. I didn't even blink. The whisper came again. I'm still here. Something about those words turned my stomach cold, because she didn't sound like she was standing in another apartment on the other side of the wall. She sounded like she was inside the wall cavity itself. I spent the rest of the night sitting upright on the mattress, staring at the plaster. I didn't dare close my eyes. By sunrise, I convinced myself it was a half-dream. Sleep paralysis. Auditory hallucination from moving stress. I had an overactive imagination. That's what I told myself. But the next night, she came back. This time, she wasn't whispering. She was humming. A soft, shaky tune. Off-key, childlike. But the sound vibrated through the wall like she was pressing her lips against it on the other side. I banged on the wall without thinking. Hey, whoever you are, stop. The humming stopped instantly. Silence. Then, you heard me. It wasn't a question. It was a realization. I didn't respond. You shouldn't ignore me. I get lonely in here. I stumbled back, heart racing, and grabbed my phone. I didn't know who I planned to call. 911? The landlord? A priest? But before I could dial anything, the voice returned, sharper now. You're in my room. My blood went cold. Her tone wasn't sad anymore. It was angry, territorial, like I'd taken something that belonged to her. I grabbed my jacket and left the apartment, not caring that it was nearly 3 a.m. I slept in my car in a gas station parking lot. In the morning, I marched straight to the landlord's office. There's someone in the walls, I said bluntly. He didn't laugh. He didn't look confused. He didn't ask questions like normal people do when you say something insane. He just sighed. I was hoping you wouldn't hear her. What? I stared, waiting for him to explain, but he only rubbed his temples. That building is old, he said quietly. Very old. And it has history. What history? He hesitated. You wouldn't believe me. Try me. But he only shook his head. I'll move you to another unit. Today. For free. That should have been enough to get me out. It should have been the end of the story. I should have left that apartment and never looked back. But I didn't. Because when someone offers you an escape without explaining the danger, your brain becomes obsessed with knowing why. I went back. Not because I wanted to live there. I wanted to understand. And that night I found out. I stayed awake until almost 3 a.m., sitting in the center of the room with the lights off. My eyes were locked on the wall where her voice came from. Nothing happened until exactly 3:12 a.m. Then I heard tapping. Tap, tap, tap. Slow, methodical, from inside the wall. Are you listening? Her voice was different. Closer, more clear. You shouldn't have come back. I barely managed to speak. Who are you? A soft laugh seeped through the wall like smoke. I forget. You forget. I've been here so long. Her voice cracked. Too long. They left me. They put me in here. How did you get inside? I didn't want to, she whispered. But they made me. I swallowed hard. My throat felt like sandpaper. Who made you? Silence. Then something scraped against the inside of the wall. Human nails dragging across wooden beams. Scrapey. Scrape. The sound made every muscle in my body lock. You want to know? She said. Don't you? No, you do. I can hear it. I can hear everything inside you. I wanted to run, but something compelled me to stay. Curiosity. Fear. The strange, hypnotic pull of her voice. Let me out, she whispered. My heart nearly stopped. WH what? If you open the wall, she said, I can come out. Then you won't hear me anymore. A wave of dread pinned me to the floor. Because she didn't mean it like a plea. She meant it like a threat. Please open it. Her voice trembled now, desperate. It's dark. I can't move anymore. You can help me. I stood slowly, backing away. You said they put you in there? I forced out. Who is they? More scraping. Then a gentle knock from inside the wall. Exactly where my head would be if I were lying in bed. Knock. 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 "They're gone now," she whispered. "But you're here. You can let me out." I grabbed my keys and bolted, slamming the door behind me. I didn't come back for 2 days. The landlord called me multiple times, but I ignored every attempt. On the 3rd day, I finally worked up the nerve to return only to gather my belongings. When I walked into the apartment, something felt wrong. The air was stale, heavy, too cold, and the wall, the one she spoke through, had a crack running vertically from the floor to the ceiling. A long, thin gap, like something had been pushing from the inside. My stomach twisted. I turned to leave, but froze, because behind me, on the opposite wall of the room, I heard breathing. Slow, trembling, hungry breathing. I didn't move. The breathing grew louder, then a whisper directly against the plaster behind my back. "You took too long." I felt the vibration of her voice through the wall into my spine. Every instinct I had screamed run. I sprinted out of the apartment and down the stairs. I didn't look back. Not once, because I swear I could hear footsteps inside the walls following me as I fled. The landlord refunded every cent I paid and told me the apartment would remain sealed. I don't know what that means. I don't want to know. But sometimes in the middle of the night, lying in my new place with thick, modern walls, I swear I hear her voice again. Not whispering this time. Calling. "Why did you leave me?" And no matter how loud I turn on the TV or how tightly I cover my ears, I can still hear her humming that same broken tune from inside the walls. Because I don't think she was trapped in that apartment. I think she was trapped in me.